what's happening now for organizations and organizational structures post-pandemic is they're really just transforming and transitioning into the 21st century. That's all that's going on.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset, everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer. Be sure to head over to clicksandbricksacademy.com so you can access all the resources to start improving your sales today.
Today we have Leni with Workplace Experience with us. She's an amazing entrepreneur. She's got a book and a new consulting firm. But before we bring Leni in, if you would like to join my text line community, my number is 314-370-2871. Ask me any question about business or technology, and I'll give you an unbiased, absolutely free answer. How are you doing today, Leni?
I'm awesome, Ken. Thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. I had a great time talking to you before we jumped on the show. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
I am a workplace experience specialist, and I realized after coming back to America after being away for 20 years that it is not that popular an industry. So because I realized it wasn't so popular an industry and I've seen its superpower, I wrote and published the book. That's how that happened. I'm a workplace experience specialist, and what that means is my focus is making sure that you, the worker, have an experience in your workplace environment that allows you to thrive. And we'll talk about that in more detail later, but that's essentially what I do.
Fantastic. So this is really important stuff. Post-pandemic, it was an employer's market, hands down. But post-pandemic, it is an employee's market. So employers are going to have to step up to the plate and create more experiences for their employees because they're going to have to want to come to work for you. Silicon Valley nailed this in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and the rest of the country kind of just didn't really adopt workplace experiences where Silicon Valley did. It did start to trickle off a lot before the pandemic, but post-pandemic, I think we're going to have a lot of businesses step up to the plate, creating workplace experiences that are more fun, energetic, and thriving for their employees. So I think this is going to be a really important episode for a lot of people. And thank you for joining us today. Can you,
thanks for having me.
You came back to America to start this company, right? Can you tell the audience a little bit about the journey of where you were and what motivated you to start this company?
Awesome. Well, okay. You're in for a ride then, because I have a pretty colorful background.
Fantastic.
Because there is no industry. It's not like you can go to school to study workplace experience. So everybody in the workplace industry have come from different backgrounds. Mine is really from, I like to say, understanding human psychology and human behavior background. I actually started with a degree in acting. So I studied acting in New York and was a professional actor for more than 10 years. I'm half Filipino and half American, so I've lived in both places. Now in America, I mean New York City. So I'm really an East Coast girl now living in the West Coast.
And New York City is not indicative of the entire country. It's almost like a different planet, right?
It is, yeah. But so is Silicon Valley. I mean, I think anywhere you go in the United States, that's what I love about it, is right. You cannot pigeonhole any American from anywhere, which is kind of cool. But I also so I studied acting, did that as a professional actor, went back to school, studied interior design, then was hired by a company in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, so in the UAE, to set up an interior design company, which I ran successfully. So then they asked me to run their real estate development company. So when you think about acting, which is understanding human behavior in such an in-depth way that you take it on and live it as your own. I mean, that's really what acting is.
Right.
When you study interior design and you start designing for people, it's creating an environment that is specific to people's behavior, family's behavior, that kind of thing. And then when I went into corporate real estate, and it was real estate development, it was developing real estate establishments and environments, so a bigger perspective. And then I moved then back to the Philippines, and that's where I put all of that together and really created the first workplace experience in Asia. And for 7 years, I worked in a pharmaceutical company, ironically. And it was great because that was where I really saw the impact that an experience in your workplace had on the workers. and productivity boomed, business boomed. People were wanting to work for that company because of the workplace experience. Nobody wanted to leave, everybody stayed. So retention rate was high, business was high, the turnover rate was very low. So I saw that and I was excited by that. I realized I wanted to be closer to where workplace experience really, thrives. And that's when I moved to Silicon Valley 3 years ago, came to Silicon Valley, realized that, okay, there are a lot of gaps in the industry that needed to be addressed. I opened my website, wrote my book, published that. And then the pandemic hit, and everything that I had been talking about pre-pandemic, which is focusing on employees and the workers, now come into fruition. I mean, it's ironic, Ken, when you were saying about how many companies pre-pandemic weren't focusing on employees. Well, that's kind of a sad state, because study after study have shown that happier employees produce better business. It's just always been that way. And if you think about the Great Resignation, which is still 4 million people resigning every month since February, and you think about that, it's because finally, after all these years of not having a happy experience at work, people are fed up with it.
And today, a person, all they have to have, everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a car. They don't have to have a boss anymore. They can literally pick up the app. They can work when they want, how they want, in the comfort of their car or the comfort of their home. So this is a completely different world. And if you have a business, then you need people to come travel to your company every day, or even sit down and deal with you on Zoom, right? The geographic barriers for good work are almost gone, which is phenomenal in so many ways, right? Where low-income communities had to get bussed to have good jobs before, they just need an internet connection now, and they can get a good job in a low-income community and start bettering themselves on a daily basis. Not only just on the workplace, the technology is helping, but it's also helping in the education, right? So employers right now can start doing education programs about their company, give those away for free, and you're pre-training people before they even start working for you. It's a phenomenal idea for business owners. Get them trained, right? Facebook used to have these hackathons to see, and the winners got a job. So the world that we're living in today is wildly different than it was 2 years ago, and employers are going to have to continue to make changes to attract employees to come work for them. It's more than money. It is, I lean a lot on company culture. I lean really, really heavy on company culture, laid back, business casual. And I bet you I could do a lot better in the company experience, the workplace experience for my employees.
Yes. And the thing about when you were saying, we all have the technology now, and what is ironic is the thing about organizations and organizational structures is that it hasn't changed since the Industrial Revolution. That's 1800s, which means that companies have always been centralized. Their organizational structures have been centralized into a corporate office. Now, cut to how many years later, technology has come and changed our entire existence.
Yes.
But companies did not want to let go of this structure that they've been leaning on for the last 200 years. So when the pandemic happened and things were decentralized, many companies were worried that their businesses were going to plummet in this new structure. But employees have now worked from home, and they realize that they can be with their families, they can have the best of their families and the people and the things that they value and care for, and work at the same time. So now the companies are wanting you to return to the office. It's kind of like, well, why? Why when really you can have the best of both worlds, and technology has already done that. So technically, what's happening now for organizations and organizational structures post-pandemic is they're really just transforming and transitioning into the 21st century.
Yeah. Now, also on the consumer side and the employee side, this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because I know for me, in almost all of my business, except for the mid-level people, my payroll went up by 30% roughly over the past 2 years. That is hyperinflation for the staffing. So that means that our products are going to cost more, and we already have supply chain issues and things like that. As an employer, it doesn't have to really be that 30% increase. Sometimes it's going to have to be, because if you were paying people at a standard for a specific job 2 years ago, it's harder to find that kind of employee today. Now, there are some things that you can do. You can cater to a more niche kind of worker. People on the spectrum that's generally harder for them to find jobs. But if you want them to work for you, you have to create a culture and an experience that fits for them because they're differently enabled, right? They have different abilities, a lot of times fantastic abilities, attention to detail and things like that. But you really have to cater to that kind of employee for their personal needs. And this isn't a situation anymore to where you can say, okay, this department gets these resources for employment. It's going to have to really be down to an individual level for what that employee, not only what that employee values, but what that employee needs to be wildly productive, right? Correct. And that could be, as an employer, sometimes it's hard when an employee comes to you and says, hey, I need this kind of chair, and it's a $500 chair, and everybody else is sitting in $200 chairs. To say, okay, I'm going to get this for you because you have these issues. And sometimes it's hard for an employer to understand that because they're not looking at it from the employee's perspective.
That is correct.
Moving forward, I don't know that employers are going to get away with it anymore. The employees have almost unionized globally and said, we're not going to take poor work conditions or what they perceive to be poor work conditions. Now, I grew up in the 80s. I started working when I was 11 on a work permit. Work conditions today are far superior than they ever were, but they could be better. And I think that's where America is right now, is we can be better. And I think that's an okay, good thing to be.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's okay thing that people are treated as people and not as employee numbers, because that's just the way that it should be.
One of my favorite songs is Bob Seger's I'm Not a Number.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go.
I don't work in corporate America for that very specific reason. I like to know the people's names that I work with. I know every single employee that I have's name. I don't have a lot of employees, but I know them all the names. Most of them I know their wives or their husbands. And, we've went out to dinner a couple times maybe. So I think those things are really important. Your job is where you are at, 33% of your life. And it should be a good experience. It shouldn't be something that you don't like doing. And I feel so sorry for the person. And I did this for a little bit in my life. Wake up every morning thinking, man, I don't want to go do this job. I don't want to do this job for 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours. So it's a miserable place to be. I never want to be there again. And I don't want that for anybody. So
no. And just to throw it in there, did you know that before the pandemic, there was a Gallup poll that we in Workplace kept referring to, which showed that 70% of America's workforce were unhappy, disengaged in their workplace. That means that they weren't happy. 70% of people. So,
and I would try to correlate that with the obesity pandemic that we have in this country, right? It's about the same number. If you're not happy for 8 hours of your day, right, you're going to find joy and you're going to get dopamine somewhere, and that candy bar is part of it. So, yeah, it's healthiness. Being a healthy person is more about, being happy throughout the day than it is about the diet and exercise, in my opinion. Stress is a horrible, horrible thing to have in your life. If you can remove it, you should. So today in America, we have this big debate because we're post-pandemic. People are wanting to come back. They want to get in the office. They want to be social. They want to do things. Employers, and I'm guilty of this too, absolutely, they want their staff there. They feel like it's more productive. They feel like meetings happen faster and, banter happens much better. What are your thoughts on the debate between should I just adopt a hybrid environment and understand that people are going to be working differently in the future? Or should I really focus on getting people back into my office for productivity?
That's a wonderful question. It's the question that I get so often. I first want to define something a little bit for everybody here. It's that when you hear the term hybrid and you hear the term about work from anywhere and that kind of thing, it really is pertaining to a very small percentage of the workforce in America and in the world. 80% of the global workforce is in what's called a deskless workforce or a deskless industry. That encompasses transportation, if you work on TV or in podcasts and you're producing, retail, hospitality, transportation, I say that, healthcare, anything that is client-facing. That is the vast majority of the workforce. Now, they don't have that same choice. And when your work requires that you are in a space, in a particular space, then I think even the workers would agree that they need to be focusing their work in that environment. Having said that, it doesn't mean that just because you are in a deskless workforce and you have to be in the office, that you don't have the same voice, because you do. You are entitled to a safe workplace. You should have an experience that allows you to thrive, that makes you feel good about what you do and that you enjoy doing what you do. So it doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, and that will evolve as well. Now, in particular, when you're talking about a hybrid work environment, so we're talking about the people who work in corporate, who have the choice. These would be people who are, say, in HR or finance or corporate, maybe marketing, areas that you have the choice to work from home. In these spaces, absolutely 100%, the thing of the future and the thing of now is autonomy. And that is, you should have a choice where you should work. What is the environment that enables you to thrive? Is it at home? Is it in the office? And it's not the same for everyone. There is a fallacy that people are saying you've got to come back to the office because collaborating in person is the best way for ideas to get off the table. Studies have already shown that that is wrong, and that is not true. And the reason for that is because the truth is, in-person collaboration, it's the loudest person in the room that gets the idea across. It's not everybody in the room. Studies have already shown that. And it's the same thing on Zoom. If you're going to try to collaborate in Zoom in the same way that you're doing in person in the office, it's the loudest person in the room that's going to get their idea across. It is re-understanding how people think, where their comfort zones are, where their personal preferences are. And that is going to evolve. So when we talk about hybrid or not hybrid, first of all, I'm kind of a little bit allergic to the term hybrid because hybrid means two. You know, like when you talk about a hybrid car, it's either gas or electric. Hybrid means two. And the thing about working...
Can hybrid mean multiple, though?
Mostly it refers to two. When you think about hybrid, it normally means two. And so that's why I don't like to use the term so much. Because
so maybe ad hoc.
Today, it could be. And everybody has a different term. There's a company that calls it spoke, which is kind of nice because it's in the middle of a wheel.
Right.
It really is work from anywhere. You could call it a workplace ecosystem. And right now, today, you talk about hybrid a lot because the pandemic is still ongoing. So it's either home or the office. But eventually, people are going to be traveling for work. So you're working on train stations, on trains, on airplanes, in hotel rooms. Right now, people are working in libraries where Wi-Fi is better. That's also a workplace. So it's really an ecosystem.
And I would challenge people, right? So I have multiple jobs. I think I have 6 right now that I get paid for. But you know, the podcast is one of them. And even still, I'm going to Miami next week, and we're still shooting episodes, right? So my staff is staying here to do the switching, and I'm going to dial in from Zoom from the hotel room and do these podcasts. I'm not going to have my normal background with me, but you know, totally doable. So I would urge an employee that has a concept of, hey, I want to work from home. Now, obviously gauge your relationship with your boss, right? And have that. But if you have a good relationship with your boss and he's kind of like, or he or she is like, no, I really don't like this. I don't know how you're going to work from home. If you can come up with a creative solution, introduce it to him and say, hey, you know, if I did this, that would allow me to work from home sometimes, right? And maybe you can you got to teach your old dog some new tricks sometimes. And the employee, if they really want this, they can approach it in a delicate way with somebody that's saying, hey, I don't think this is good. Don't beat them up and say, hey, I can work better if I'm working from home. But, you know, bring them the ideas. Most entrepreneurs and managers, they're open to ideas, right? What they don't want to hear is I can't do this, that, or this because of why. They want to say, hey, I can do this, and this is how I can do it. What they don't want to do is take the time out to figure out how you can work from home.
Correct. What I would suggest in that space, if you want to have that conversation, focus on the results. Focus on your results, what you're going to achieve towards. It should be a results-focused conversation, because then it doesn't matter where you're working from. Whether you're working from the office or you're working from wherever, it's just, look, I'm going to deliver this result at this time, and I will update you along the way.
So if it's what you want to do, like, I know my daughter did some at-home schooling during the pandemic, and she absolutely hated it. She's like, I have to go to school. I'm going to fail if I don't have that sitting in the classroom mentality, right? So everybody is different, and we really have to start treating everybody like they're unique people and dealing with what they value, right? I know, and I have an employee that wanted to take half days off on Tuesday, but it was the point of, okay, well, you're not going to be working a full 40 hours a week then. And it wasn't even we said, well, why don't we just wait till the next pay raise time? And instead of getting that pay raise, we'll just reduce your hours, because he's a salary employee, right? So now he's got reduced hours. He didn't take the increase in pay that year, and it's working out very well. He's happier. He's doing the things that he wants to do on his Tuesday afternoons, and I don't know what that is. Don't really care. But on the other, when he's here and he's focused and dedicated. And I think bosses and managers that can take those kinds of situations and give the employee what they value, you'll end up having an employee that will go to war with you, right? And sometimes you need that. And you have to have employees that are willing to go to war with you, because you're going to have struggle times in your business. It's going to happen. Any business is going to be there. So fantastic.
Yes.
I love your input on that, work from home, work from the office mentality. And, a lot of jobs can't be done remotely.
Correct.
But as technology grows and robotics continue and artificial intelligence continues, that's going to continue to be less and less jobs that require a person to be at a place. And I don't know what the future looks like. Musk says we're going to have a living wage, and I don't know how we're going to avoid that long term. And I'm a conservative guy, but I'm pretty sure at some point we're going to have to just have a living wage for people, because there's not going to be robotics and AI are going to take a lot of work away from mankind. There's just no doubt about it. So we get to spend time thinking and doing better stuff, things that make us happier.
Here's my caveat that I want to throw at that, because I think you're right, but I also think that jobs are going to change. So where you have, it's open, right? We're thinking about it in the future, but that's where I would think, to support your idea, that I don't think that we'll get to a place where there's nothing to do. I think the awesome thing is that we'll get to a place where perhaps people will be more managerial now. Perhaps people will think more strategically now. Perhaps, the daily grind kind of manufacturing or assembly line kind of jobs can be done by machines. But that
all the objective work goes away. So the work that we're going to have left is subjective work. Or I guess not all the objective work. We're still going to have people fixing the robots and turning wrenches and stuff. We're going to have some of that.
Making the robots. Yeah.
But it's not going to be nearly as much as there is today. So if there's any kind of work that is just, here's the 17 steps to do it, that work is going to go away, right? So I think over-the-road truckers goes away long term. I think the only truckers are going to be that last mile trucker, right? That from the warehouse to the address. But I even think that's drones long term. Now, we've already touched on this a little bit on the future of what that looks like. And can you give us a little bit of an idea of what you think the future of a workplace experience is going to be like with technology in the next 5, 10, even 20 years, if you want to bust out that, really rub that crystal ball?
I love it. And that's a great question. And I would love to see it evolve forwards rather than backwards. And let me explain that. What I mean is, right now you're seeing technologies, Zoom is an example. There are other workplace technologies that I've seen in place where technology is trying to enable people who are working at home to do the things that people can do in the office. So it's kind of like even in school, and I like to use this as an example. Because I also just started taking my master's degree online during the pandemic. And most of the structures of schools are the same way, where it's an old school fashion, where you have all the students in there, you all meet at a certain time, and the teacher is up there talking to you. In my mind, this is an old-fashioned way of doing schooling.
Right.
It's the same way with meeting. It's an old-fashioned way of doing things, because you're still trying to think of bringing it to what you know in the past, rather than evolving it into the future. So when I talk about what future workplaces could be with the use of technology, it starts with changing your perception of working, period. Because it's no longer working from the office. Working remotely means working. So do you have to meet in a meeting all the time? What does that look like? How is that going to change? And how is technology going to enable you? The best example I can give you is the schooling that I'm in now. The school that I have now, I chose it because it's an online program. It was developed before the pandemic, and it is thriving during the pandemic because its program is developed for individual workers, regardless of where it is that you're working from, or no matter what your day is like. They give you specific programs, deliverables. It's about the deliverables. And in today's technology, you have your book to guide you, but you have a wealth of information on the internet that can also educate you. And so that is a great example of in the educational program where education is going to go in the future. Workplaces will be going in that direction as well. But it starts with changing the perception of what work is.
Absolutely. So I joked earlier and I said I have 6 jobs right now. And that's not an exaggeration at all. I've got a couple businesses that I own and operate. And I have 2 jobs that I literally have 30-minute jobs each month. They pay really, really well. It's a board seat and a consulting seat for a magazine. It pays really well for that half hour of work. And basically, their thinking is that my whole month of experience, we can have a 30-minute conversation. I can do my data dump with them, and they pay me very well for that for my month of experience and knowledge in my industries that I'm in, and it works very well for me. But those, it's probably my most profitable hour of the whole month is those 2 jobs. It's really nice.
Because it's about your delivery. It's about your result, which
Correct.
You can't put a figure to, because your wealth of experience and your current experience, all that adds the flavor to what you deliver. Absolutely. It doesn't matter what time, how much time, where you're working from. It's about your results. And that's
Absolutely.
where the focus should be.
I love all of your insight. Thank you so much for bringing this industry to the United States and really focusing. I think you're in the right spot at the right time. Business owners need this stuff. They need this knowledge. They need to know that if they're not going to make changes in the future, their business is in jeopardy. And right now I think they're clouded. They're like, oh, people don't want to come to work, and they're making up these, oh, they're just lazy, or it's the pandemic. But something's changing in the mindset of America as a whole. And they're not going to take substandard or just okay work environments. It's going to have to be something better, right?
Yes.
And I would beg you all to, when you're doing these extra things for your employees, try to make healthier decisions for them. Instead of having pizza and beer on Friday, have fruit and water in your refrigerator all the time for them. Try to make these healthier decisions for your employees. And I know that's becoming more and more popular in our country because, all from me growing up, it was, happy hours and stuff like that, which is not the best thing to do when you're trying to create a happy, healthy work environment. So,
right. That's right.
Before we go, Leni, do you have anything you would like to leave with the audience? I think you've got a giveaway that you would like to do.
I do. And for those of you who don't know what workplace experience is, but want to incorporate that in your environment, I'm very excited to share with you today, all of you listeners, reach out to me on my website, which is workplaceexperience.net. It's workplace experience spelled with an X, workplaceexperience.net. Reach out to me. Tell me that you listened to this podcast and this video, and I will send you a free copy that I'll autograph for you with your name and everything. I'll send you a free copy of my book on workplace experience directly to you. And I did want to put this a little bit in perspective for you so that you kind of understand what a workplace experience is through this analogy. Dr. Craig Knight shared this with us earlier today. And if you think about going to a zoo, we think about animals who are in these cages that don't have environments, that are, small cages. And we look at that and we think, oh my God, that's so inhumane, that's terrible. And you go to zoos where there are bigger environments that look like their natural habitat, and you're like, wow, that's perfect, that's better, it's more humane, it's better for the animals. Well, here's the ironic thing. Why aren't we thinking about that for human beings? Because if you're going to force people in an environment in which they do not thrive, that really is inhumane. Whereas if you provide them with an environment that allows them to thrive, that is natural to them, they will be better people, better human beings, better workers, which will drive better business. So if you want to learn more, contact me, reach out to me, and I'd be very happy to send you a free copy of Workplace Experience.
Fantastic. I love your analogy. And if you want to take it to the bad side, is we've been treating our employees like crappy zoo animals.
Yes.
Not that the animals are bad. The zookeepers are bad. Right?
Yes.
So,
that's right. That's right.
That's horrible. So yeah, absolutely. I love that insight. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching today's show, folks. That's it for today. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. I'll never try to sell you anything on that line. Just 1 or 2 tips or tricks throughout the month. That's it. and get to work.